Hi everyone, this is Nurse Anna from nursestudy.net. Today we are going to learn about endocarditis. Now that word sounds scary and complicated, but I promise by the end of this video it's going to make total sense. We're going to break it down together. What it is, why it happens, what your patient looks like, how we test for it, how we treat it, and the nursing care you need to know for the NCLEX. So grab your notebook, get comfy, and let's dive in. What is endocarditis? Okay, let's start with the basics. Endocarditis is an infection of the inner lining of the heart, and especially the heart valves. Here's an easy way to picture it. The inside of your heart has a smooth lining called the endocardium. Think of it like the smooth paint on the inside walls of a room. Now imagine germs get into the bloodstream and stick to that lining, especially on the valves. As those germs grow, they clump together with little bits of clot and form sticky blobs. We call those blobs vegetations. And here's why we care so much. Those vegetations do two bad things. First, they damage the valves, so the valves can't open and close properly. And that means the heart can't pump blood the way it should. Second, those sticky clumps can break off and travel to other organs, which we'll talk about later. So hold on to that word, vegetations, because it comes up again and again. A simple memory trick. Now, I don't want you to memorize a giant messy list of symptoms. Instead, I want you to remember one word, fever. Each letter points you to a classic sign of endocarditis. F is for fever. That's the body's alarm bell telling us there's an infection. E is for emboli. Remember those clumps? They can break off and travel to the brain, the skin, or the spleen. V is for vascular signs. These are little clues on the body like splinter hemorrhages under the nails, Janeway lesions, and Osler nodes. E is for endocardial, meaning a new or changed heart murmur because the valves are getting damaged. And R is for Roth spots. Those are tiny bleeds in the eyes that a provider might see on an eye exam. So anytime you're stuck, just spell out F-E-V-E-R and you've got the classic picture. Risk factors to remember. Let's talk about who is most at risk because the NCLEX loves to ask this. First, patients with damaged or artificial valves. A rough or man-made surface gives germs the perfect place to grab on and stick. Second, IV drug use. When needles aren't sterile, bacteria go straight into the bloodstream and straight to the heart. Third, anyone with a history of endocarditis before. Once you've had it, you're more likely to get it again. And fourth, invasive procedures. Things like dental work, catheters, and surgery can introduce germs into the blood. So if you see a patient with any of these, your antenna should go up. It starts with germs in the blood. So where do these germs actually come from? Endocarditis starts with bacteria, or sometimes fungi, getting into the blood. The most common culprit today is Staphylococcus aureus, especially in patients who use IV drugs. Next is Streptococcus, the viridans type, which often shows up after dental work and loves already damaged natural valves. Then we have Enterococcus, which is linked to gut or urinary procedures and tends to show up more in older adults. And less commonly, fungi like Candida, usually in patients with prosthetic valves or a weakened immune system. Here's the NCLEX Pearl to lock in. We always draw blood cultures to find the exact germ before starting antibiotics. That way we can pick the right drug to actually kill it. How it happens step by step. Let's walk through how this whole thing happens one step at a time. If you understand the story, you'll never have to memorize it. Step 1, the valve surface gets roughened, maybe from damage or a device. Either way, it leaves a sticky spot. Step 2, germs enter the blood. They get in through the skin, the mouth, or a procedure. Step 3, those germs find that sticky spot, latch on, and start to multiply. And step 4, the germs plus little clots build up into those clumps we talked about. the vegetations. So the whole story is rough spot, germs in the blood, germs stick and grow, vegetations form. Simple as that. How does the patient present? Now, let's picture the actual patient in front of you. You're going to see signs of infection plus signs of a heart that's struggling. You'll see fever and chills. That's the body's alarm going off. You'll hear a new heart murmur. That's the damaged valve making an abnormal sound. You'll notice fatigue and night sweats because the body is fighting a slow, ongoing infection. And you may spot skin signs, those splinter hemorrhages, Janeway lesions, and Osler nodes. Put it together and you've got a patient who feels run down, is running a fever, and has a heart that's not sounding quite right. When vegetations break off. Okay, this is the don't miss this slide, so lean in. This is the part that can turn dangerous fast. Remember those vegetations sitting on the valve? Pieces of them can break off, travel through the blood, and block a vessel somewhere far from the heart. When that happens, we call it an embolism. If a piece travels to the brain, it can cause a stroke. So watch for sudden weakness or slurred speech. If the valves get wrecked, the heart can't pump, and fluid backs up, that's heart failure. And emboli can also hit the spleen, the kidneys, or the arms and legs, causing organ damage. So here's the big takeaway. If your endocarditis patient suddenly has new neuro changes, think possible stroke and act fast. That's a safety priority. Diagnostic workup. So how do we actually diagnose endocarditis? There are two main steps, and order matters. First, blood cultures. We draw several sets before starting antibiotics so we can find the exact germ. We also track the patient's fever because ongoing or spiking fevers point to an active infection, and we check labs like the white count, which will usually be high. Then the echocardiogram. That's an ultrasound of the heart that lets us actually look for the vegetations on the valves. There are two kinds, the TTE, which is the quick, non-invasive first look, and the TEE, where a probe goes down the throat for a much clearer picture. The echo tells us how big the vegetation is and how much damage there is, and that helps the team decide whether surgery is needed. Cultures first, then the echo. Easy to remember. Treatment options. Now let's talk treatment. The goal is simple. Kill the germs first and fix the valve if we have to. Number one, and the most important, is IV antibiotics. These run for a long time, often 4 to 6 weeks, and they're chosen based on those blood culture results. This is the heart of the treatment. Number two is supportive care. We manage the fever, keep an eye on how the heart is working, and treat any signs of heart failure as they come up. And number three is valve surgery, which we save for the serious cases, big vegetations, heart failure, or an infection that just won't clear. In those cases, the team repairs or replaces the valve. So think antibiotics for everyone and surgery when the damage is too much. Nursing assessment. All right, this is our lane, nursing assessment. What are we actually watching for at the bedside? I like to split it into two buckets. Bucket one is the heart and circulation. We listen for a new or changing murmur. We monitor vital signs and trend that temperature. We watch for signs of heart failure like swelling or crackles in the lungs, and we check the pulses and perfusion out in the arms and legs. Bucket two is infection and emboli. We assess for fever, chills, fatigue, and night sweats. We inspect the skin for those splinter hemorrhages and lesions. We do neuro checks because remember, a sudden change could mean a stroke. And we watch urine output because emboli can hit the kidneys. So two buckets, the heart and the infection with its travelers. Patient teaching. Now, one of the most important things we do as nurses is teach. So here's what our endocarditis patient needs to hear before they go home. Number one, finish all your antibiotics. Even when you start feeling better, take the full course because that's the only way to fully clear the infection. Number 2, take care of your teeth. Good dental hygiene matters, and always tell your dentist about your history because that lowers the risk. Number 3, know your warning signs. Report a new fever, new weakness, or chest pain right away. Don't wait. And number 4, prevent future infections. If you're high risk, ask your provider about taking antibiotics before certain procedures. Simple, clear teaching that keeps our patients safe long after they leave us. NCLEX Pearls. Okay, let's lock in the high yield points you want fresh in your mind on test day. I've got 6 quick pearls. 1. Cultures first. Always draw blood cultures before starting antibiotics. 2. Think fever, emboli, vascular signs, endocardial murmur, Roth spots. 3. A new murmur is a classic red flag. 4. Emboli travel. So sudden neuro changes may mean a stroke and you act fast. 5. Antibiotics run for weeks, so teach your patient to stick with the full course. And 6. Know who's at risk. Valve problems and IV drug use are the biggest ones. If you remember just these 6, you're in great shape. Key takeaways. All right, let's wrap it all up. Here's everything in a nutshell. Endocarditis is an infection of the heart's inner lining, especially the valves. Germs form vegetations that damage those valves and can break off as emboli. When you're thinking about the signs, just remember FEVER, fever, emboli, vascular signs, endocardial murmur, and Roth spots. We diagnose it with blood cultures first, then an echocardiogram to see the vegetations. We treat it with weeks of IV antibiotics and valve surgery if the damage is severe. And as nurses, we trend the vitals, listen for murmurs, watch for stroke, and teach our patients to finish their antibiotics. And that's endocarditis made simple. You've got this. This is Nurse Anna from nursestudy.net. I'll see you in the next one.